Hello and welcome to Horror Cinema Podcast. I'm Joe, here with me is my co-host Dan.
Hello and greetings.
We also have Jet with us today. And he's not looking at me. Oh, what have I done? I must pay for my sins! Anyways, we just saw Jumanji. I have to admit, I had nightmares at like 4 years old when I saw this.
I don't blame you.
But it's awesome! I love it! But that said, at like 8 or 9 years old, it left a definitive impact on me with the scene where, at the end, when it's like, aren't you going to run, boy? No. Aren't you scared? Yes, but my father told me I should face what I fear. Good lad. Right before he goes to shoot him. Like, what can one say about this movie? There's so many... I know it's a meme thing for a lot of people, but it's actually a really good horror movie.
Yeah.
And I think the real horror is in the board game itself, just how it torments people.
How evil it is.
Yeah. It's just that it's more psychological in some ways than what people realize, I think. Because, all right, to start with, yeah, Alan screws up his life, and Carl's. Poor Carl Bentley. That said, the thing is, once he's sucked into the game, and 26 years later, and he's let out after the game torments the kids, Judy and Peter, is it?
Yeah.
He comes out, and remember that, like the most scary scene in some ways is, I've seen things you couldn't even imagine in there. And like when you see them eating, you pray that you're not dessert. But scared? Oh, you don't even know the meaning of the word. I love that speech. Robin Williams, as always, perfect casting. And he does a perfect job.
And then later he has a similar conversation with, I think, Sarah.
Yeah, although, okay, I have to admit, that speech is the second scariest, because the scariest might just be he'll make you feel like a child. He finishes that. Then you have, Van Pelt, the hunter, comes in, going, why don't you face me like a man? As he shoots, he continuously tries to kill him and chases him out of the mansion. That's just, it's just so jarring because it happens all of a sudden. And I just love the follow-up scene, how you have Alan Parrish just going, where you've got Sarah going, it's the negative energy, and then tells him, have you ever tried talking to him? What? Are you crazy? The man has a gun! But I also like how he says, I don't know. You'd think it'd be he finds everything about me offensive. You'd think I'd be a waste of his time. Which, yeah... heck, there's also a great, the thing in this movie is they don't just cop out. Mm-hmm. They go even for the emotional punches, because they know that Robin Williams is a great character actor. And this is one of his sadder films, in a way, because, at least in that Jumanji timeline, because
he can pull off a much more tragic, depressing
character, like in this film. Because he's also thinner than some of his other films. Which I do appreciate that, because normally he's a little plump in the 80s films. As seen, I think, Hook. But here he's a bit more thin. But I like how, he finds the one bum living in his father's workhouse, and he goes, in his shoe house, and he goes, well, the guy tells him Sam poured everything into finding his son, his money, his time, and he stopped coming to the factory. He just stopped caring. And that's when Alan realizes how much his dad loved him. Mm-hmm. But then, he then asks, are the Parishes still around? Oh, I see them from time to time. They're on, what was it? Adam Street or something like that. And it's just, and you see for a moment, Alan doesn't understand then, he gets it, then it's to the tombstone, which, if you pay attention, the dad died in May of 1991, Carol, his wife, Alan's mom, died in August, about 3 months later. And the thing is, the thing that I find really horrifying is almost in that scene because, in some ways, like like the dad, from what every character mentions, was broken when his son never showed up, and his wife probably had to take care of him. And you have no doubt, watching the prologue, the couple love each other. But her husband dying must have broken her right afterwards, because she probably was able to stay strong to a limited extent while her husband was alive. But the minute he died, her spirit must have died too. Well, it was already kind of dead, but she could at least keep going for her husband's sake. Her husband just had no love for life.
Yeah, and you could wonder, it's like, is him dying, did he die to malady, just mentally inflicted shutdown, or
That's what
or even suicide?
I think he died of illness, that the body soon shut down after the mind and the heart. That's how I always imagined it, and that'd be even worse than suicide.
Yes.
Because it's a slow death across 26 years. Whereas, and with her, it was much the same. Like, if you pay attention, Robin Williams looks utterly depressed and broken in that scene. And it's a really good one. One sec. The dog. Jack, get over here. If you want to join in, you can. We need your input. You're an animal. This is Jumanji. Oh, well, okay. But Robin Williams throws us all into this film, as always. This is also one of the first films, I think, of Kirsten Dunst. And she does a fantastic job. I actually prefer her here to MJ. Her MJ was terrible.
That's because she had nothing to work with as MJ.
Yes, she had Sam Raimi, who's a good director to a point. But after Hercules' Legendary Journeys, he was garbage.
Yeah.
Sad to say. I know people love him, but his Spider-Man movies I rank in the top, 50 worst movies of all time. They're just terrible. Mm-hmm. But, every step of the way, though, the game throws things like monstrous plants, spiders, stampedes, crocodiles, monsoons, hunters. But weirdly, it's interesting because the most dangerous animal in Jumanji seems to be the man. Mm-hmm. The hunter, Van Pelt, rather than any of the plants or animals. You know what I mean? The monkeys are more a nuisance. The mosquitoes are genuinely a threat, taking out 50 people in under an hour or two. But Van Pelt is the most persistent, the most determined, and merciless. I really loved him. And the actor, who's the same actor as the father in this movie, does a fantastic job. But the movie does have a good ending where once they beat the game, because in that timeline, Judy dies, Peter degenerates into a monkey, and then, Alan wins the game, beating Van Pelt, and it's folded back 26 years. And Alan apologizes to his dad, and then who is so moved to tears and awkwardly hugs him. As Alan made a comment that the man could barely hug me, and you expect him to have killed me, but then that's he just kind of pats him he's not good at hugs. I'm glad they noticed that little anecdote, that little detail. Mm-hmm. And that adds to the story and the character. Mm-hmm. And the characters are really the strong suit of this story.
And it's interesting that as much as Alan's father had to learn a bit, Alan himself also learned.
He had to learn a lot more. Mm-hmm. And look at it from his dad's point of view.
Yeah, and for example, the entire matter of the boarding school, it's left open if Alan ended up going.
I thought it was fairly, it was a closed case that he did go. for like a year or two.
Okay.
I always took it as he did go, and it's more like he grew up to be a dutiful son, and never really. There was never any friction between him and Dad from then on, or Sam. And it's interesting that even minor characters like the mom and the dad get so much detail and so much attention on and off screen. And what's more is that most horror films often forget the characters to an extent. They get so obsessed with the monster or the horror that they're plot driven rather than character driven, and they forget that the monster is part of the plot, not a character in of itself. Now that's the nature of monsters. Whereas the characters who are fighting against the monster should be the centerpiece to an extent. Yes, you need to focus on the monster, but you also need to focus on, because in this film, the board game is the monster to an extent. Even Van Pelt is an extension of Jumanji, the board game. It does get enough attention, but the main focus is on developing the characters and showing their flaws and them trying to overcome this. Horror is no different from every other genre in that it's bound by the rules of the hero's journey, which is absolute in all storytelling. And it means you can't screw up, generally, unless you deliberately try to screw up your story, which there are people who try to do that these days for some odd reason. But in this film, yeah, it's rock solid. This is back when Hollywood could produce great movies and even good ones. Now, my one criticism is they forgot about the lion at the end of the movie. I know that's a minor thing. There's that, which was funny. But Robin Williams is not that funny in this film. I know people later said that he was in Jumanji, but he isn't. His character is a very serious one who's traumatized and trying to cope with, well, a lifetime of creatures trying to eat him and kill him. Sarah just comes off a little snippy. People thought she was a little nuts, but actually she used that to make herself a successful career. Any kind of trauma is self-inflicted on her part. I always took it as she was taking medication she didn't need, so she's a bit of a druggie. The kids, I felt worse for them. It seems the daughter took the loss of mom and dad far worse than the younger boy, in that she became a pathological liar. But on the other hand, you see how much pain she's hiding, and how much she wants to protect herself, and that's interesting. And even Carl, the cop, who was the soul man, as they call him. Oh man, I love that term. Is a fairly traumatized guy who was like, I could have saved this town with my knowledge of shoes and whatnot. But he wasn't a good businessman, so he was forced to become a cop, a job he doesn't like, and he was forced to watch the town fall apart. And while he was annoyed at being fired by the parishes, he lost a really good friend who looked up to him. And honestly, he was forced to... I think he understood that Sam never killed Alan. And he was forced to watch a boss who he did care for, despite the man firing him and having gotten mad at him. It was interesting that he was forced to watch that man basically break down and all but kill himself, along with Carol. And I don't think seeing the man become a broken shadow would give Carl any satisfaction. He comes off as a really great guy. And what's interesting is that Carl also... Carl, when he learns that it's Alan Parrish, he's very excited to see him. And he trusts him instantly, without question. That was quite the bond.
Yeah.
Sorry, but I really liked Carl in this film. And it was one thing I noticed in the 1969 period. You got to bear in mind, this was before the second wave civil rights movement from the late 70s to 80s, and there was still a bit of prejudice in the late 60s, and half of Parrish's employees looked to be black. Well, maybe not half, but a third of them looked to be black. And that was interesting in that it's the impression I got and the way they were behaving, it seemed like they were there for years. I got the feeling that even before the march, Parrish had hired these people and was giving them fair wages, showing that America had a lot of decent people, even before Martin Luther King Jr., one of the greatest men in American history, ever showed up. Now, that's not to diminish the king, but the true king of the 60s, but the film's with that subtle visual, not gag, but indication shows the moral character of the parishes. And I find that, yes, there were good men and women before even the 60s. And that was important, I think. And all these little details add to an overall great film.
Yes, because the entire matter of how to approach even the matter of how a boy or a man should act, the lesson that Alan's father has to tries to dictate to Alan, and then later on,
Alan dictates it to Peter.
Yeah, and
he's like,
I was going to reference the fact that the father's like, okay, I didn't realize there were over 6 of them right there ready to beat on you.
And and he just said, I thought it was only one, but I'm proud of you. You went out there and you took your blows like a man. And it's like, damn. No, like, but the pride in his voice, like, damn, I want to make this man proud. But I got the feeling that because we don't see Carl's family, that he might have been a bit of a father figure also to Carl. And, sorry, I really like Carl in this film.
Yeah.
That said, I really liked, now, like, what I really liked was, what I also really liked was the epilogue. And how you see Carl in the background of the guitar. Because Alan, when he gets back to the past, in 1969, apologizes to his dad and tells him, Dad, about what happened to Carl and the wrecked shoe, I actually put down the conveyor belt and actually started it. It was an accident. Please give Carl back his job. I'm sorry. And Sam pretty much smiles at him and says, I'm glad you told me, son. I'm proud of you. But seeing Carl in the epilogue in the non-Jumanji future of 1995, I like that you see that Carl has remained an employee. And I just found that, I'm so glad that he got to stick around and that, I just felt glad because it was like, all's well that ends well. But I found that Jumanji had the tone of a Hammer movie in some ways. You have the great horror, especially, it's very psychological. Yes, there's also the physical threat. But it's a fairy story of sorts. And there's a good moral lesson. Quite a few, actually. And there's a lot of emotion in this film. And I love that. All movies should have that. This is a very underrated film. Maybe even the most underrated horror film of all times.
Yeah. Was there any one, the particular threat that gave you nightmares as a kid?
Van Pelt, I must stress that. The plants, and weirdly, I think the spiders. Oh, and I don't think the lion did, but it scared the crap out of me. But it was mostly the plants and the spiders. And of course, more than those, Van Bloody Pelt.
Yeah, with me it was the plants. I always
creepy.
I always got nightmares that those evil plants would grow
and eat
from my bed.
Yeah,
it wasn't a
rush. You were what, 7?
7 to it came out in
94, 95.
Yeah, about 7 to 9 years old.
Yeah,
and it's like at night, it's like, okay, is the floor going to turn into these giant man-eating plants?
Yeah, man-eating plants.
It's like was a very irrational childhood fear.
I think this movie helped contribute to my own disgust and hatred for spiders as a person. So, which I still retain to this day. I hate spiders. I don't fear them. I just hate them. I see them on sight and I just feel like I want to destroy them completely and utterly. And I see like a spider in like giant spiders in fantasy fiction. My reaction is just kill them. Like I've seen some fantasy authors try to turn them into heroes, and I always hate them. I'm like, no, kill them.
There's one.
They're the most evil things I can imagine. I agree with Tolkien.
There's one giant spider you like. Spider-Man.
Because he's awesome. But, like, well, I actually sympathize to an extent with Spider-Man's fear of becoming a man-spider, though.
Yeah, yeah.
That said, like, Tolkien's hatred, and you know what he used one of his alt devils for Lord of the Rings was Ungoliant. A giant spider that eats light and leaves unlight in its wake. And her daughter is Shelob, who tries to kill Frodo and eat the One Ring, I think, in Lord of the Rings. Shelob and Ungoliant. I think Tolkien hated spiders too, and it's the only part of nature he was like, nature could do without. I totally agree with him on that one. I think that was his belief system. It might not have been.
I'd rather spiders over mosquitoes.
Yeah, they both should go. They both deserve to perish. Anyways, how would you rate this movie?
A good 3.5.
I'm going to say a 3.3. This movie is one of the best movies out there. It's just, I can't really improve on it too much.
Mm-hmm.
I really love this film. It's not in my top 10. I don't know if it's in my top 10 horrors, but it's really high up there because of the heart and the soul in the film.
Hey,
or the soul man.
Hey, Jack, why don't you come and do the outro?
He just stares at you. All right. If you like this video, like, share, subscribe, leave a comment, and hit that notification bell. And you know what? Why don't you guys let us know what you guys think of this film, and if you guys disagree with us. So yeah. Till next time.